We bring in college basketball and basically basketball insider Brian Rauf here. And the breaking news is this, folks. Reported exclusively by Chat Sports last night, Adidas attempted to influence the nation's #1 basketball recruit, Zion Williamson, to Kansas. This in connection with Tuesday's arrest of the director of global marketing at Adidas, James Gatto. Now, just yesterday as well, Williamson's family saying to CBS Sports 7 that no one from Adidas has approached Zion or his family, and, quote, if anyone approached the family without Zion's best interests in mind, we would simply walk away. So this is just a little example of the broad stroke, the broad story here about college basketball, bribing and recruiting. A bombshell report that came out, or really an indictment that came out just a couple of days ago. And with that, here is Brian Rauf. Brian, thanks for coming on, and tell us what we know now.
What we know is Adidas was trying to influence Zion Williamson, the top recruit or #2 recruit, depending on what service you go to in the country in the 2018 class, trying to influence him to get him to go to Kansas. His top 2 schools right now were Kansas, which is the Adidas school, and Kentucky. He plays for an AAU team called SC Supreme, based out of South Carolina, which is an Adidas school, and so we've been playing on the Adidas summer circuit. And Adidas tries to, as we've seen through this probe, has become fairly clear that Adidas tries to funnel these kids to Adidas schools, and with Zion being the #1 prospect in the country and Kansas being really the top Adidas basketball school, it kind of makes perfect sense that they would try and get him to Lawrence.
No, I think the interesting statement from the family here, Brian, is that no one from Adidas has approached Zion or his family. And I ask you this here. So do you know if there has been any coordination between Kansas and Adidas, or has this been a whole Adidas thing themselves?
The only part we can confirm right now is that this has been just an Adidas thing. And we know through court documents and people I've talked to and different sources and the way business has been done in college basketball recruiting really for the past 20 years, that this is something that Adidas and other shoe companies, specifically Adidas and Nike, tend to do. Now, we know with facts with Adidas has been doing this from the FBI probe. Nike, will see if anything comes out about them. Their grassroots youth basketball league, the EYBL, Elite Youth Basketball League, was raided by the FBI on Wednesday. So more information about them will come out, I assume, in the coming days and weeks, however long the FBI takes to go through this stuff. Right now, it just seems to be an Adidas thing. Kansas may be involved. As we saw the Louisville thing, Rick Pitino and Louisville coaching staff was able to have direct contact with the Adidas officials, basically say, hey, we need your help with this guy. We don't know if that's the case with Kansas. That's just purely speculation at this point. All we know is that Adidas has been trying to get him to go to Kansas.
And it seems as though we're going to continue to break stories such as these, Brian. In many words, you know, the tip of the iceberg. So I ask you this. We do know that Zion is planning on visiting Kansas this weekend. Any word about if he is still doing that? And what do you think that's going to be like given these transgressions?
As far as we know, he's still going. He has not announced that he is not going. I don't think his reception there is going to change at all. Kansas is one of the craziest basketball fan bases in the country, just in terms of their passion and love for their team. And anytime you get a top recruit like that on campus, they're going to show him as much love as possible to try to get him to come there, whether there's Adidas money involved or not. From Kansas's perspective, especially from their fans, they're going to do everything they can to woo him and sell him on playing at Kansas for probably 1 year.
And Zion is the #1 2018 recruit, according to 24/7 Sports, Brian. Heavily pursued by the likes of Kentucky, UCLA, South Carolina. I want to get your thoughts on this. Do you think that there is some ammo here for Kentucky and UCLA to point to this report and kind of possibly influence Zion to go to them? Because, hey, look, Zion, do you want that PR nightmare, you know, playing for Kansas with this kind of surfacing over you? Do you think that it would be a play by some of the recruiters at the other schools?
For sure. Now, there's basically every school in the country is trying to get involved with Zion. Kansas and Kentucky are the two favorites. Sort of on the fringes are the South Carolina state schools of South Carolina and Clemson. the big North Carolina schools, Duke and UNC, are involved. UCLA also involved as well, getting an official visit. But it's essentially down to Kansas and Kentucky for him. One of those other schools is going to have to make some sort of crazy run over this next year and have him in for an official visit and really wow him. So this is something that Kentucky could use. I could see towards Adidas, whether it's this report or just all of the Adidas stuff in general, wanting to be associated with that. Schools will try to use that. That's a tactic in recruiting, and I'm sure Zion and his family are thinking about that as well if they want to go through this Adidas stuff, even if there's stuff that they don't know, potential school sanctions on schools, on Adidas schools, if more stuff comes out down the road.
And if you're just tuning in here on the Cam Rogers Show, folks, the breaking news this morning, Adidas attempted to influence the nation's #1 basketball recruit, Zion Williams, to go to Kansas. This possibly in connection with the arrest of James Gatto of Adidas just a couple of days ago. Brian Rauf reporting on this on our Chat Sports website. We have Brian right here to talk more about it. Brian, certainly a story that falls in line with a larger narrative, right? And, of course, you can't help but think of Brian Bowen and what's going on with Louisville right now, how Rick Pitino, perhaps out, administrative leave, as they're saying right now, but essentially fired, and Brian Bowen suspended indefinitely here for perhaps taking $100,000 worth of payment to go to play for Louisville. Is the extent of Adidas' influence with Williams similar to what we saw with Bowen, or do we just not know for sure yet?
We just don't know. Now, you would assume Bowen was the number 19 overall recruit in the 2017 class, and Williamson's the #1 guy. I don't know if they would try and come in and swoop in with a huge cash payment to get Bowen to go to an Adidas school. Bowen was down to Michigan State and Arizona, 2 Nike schools, in his recruitment before he suddenly decided to attend Louisville, an Adidas school. So that huge cash payment to him may have been Adidas's one last swoop to deter him from going to a Nike school and going to an Adidas school. With Zion, he's already considering an Adidas school. We've talked about it being Kansas and Kentucky for him, essentially an Adidas versus Nike war. I don't know. We don't know if there was similar cash payments. Williamson's family has denied having any contact with Adidas, and in turn would deny, any talks about money from Adidas. So they're a bit different situations for both of them. I think this would have been something in terms of money that would have been talked about further down the road when Williamson got ready to make his commitment. So I think this was sort of in the initial stages from what we've gathered of Adidas trying to get him to Kansas, and it didn't really get to develop the way we saw Bowen's develop and some other prospects develop because of this FBI probe.
And, of course, Zion Williamson at the center of this all. It is indeed Williamson. My apologies, folks, if I did say Williams a couple times there earlier. Brian, I'll ask you this here. You got to wonder if Gatto is the common denominator among the stories that have come out and the stories that are going to continue to come out. Is it fair to say that Gatto is at the center of many of these transgressions?
It certainly seems that way. He's the head of global marketing for basketball for Adidas, and so the fact that he is involved in this tells you that he gets involved with most of the high-profile guys. And because of his high-ranking position with Adidas as an executive, there's got to be countless other smaller players, essentially, in this guys of Adidas in smaller roles also having some sort of influence on kids like this. So I think Gatto might be, as we say with this thing, just tip of the iceberg. I'm sure he's involved with a lot of the major players, but it wouldn't surprise me if there are many more Adidas reps who are wrapped up in this as well.
And I got a little philosophical question for you here, Brian, because, of course, this is a very large story, and federal officials are calling this the dark underbelly of college basketball right now. How much darker has the belly gotten after this report?
It's not. I mean, this is for those who know college basketball and recruiting. This is the way business has been done for 20 years. It started in the 80s when shoe companies started reaching agreements with coaches to have them wear their gear, and then that branched out to schools. And then an effort to get kids to develop some brand loyalty at a younger age, they started developing summer basketball camps, and that has now morphed into these summer basketball leagues and circuits where if you're on a Nike team, you play only on the Nike circuit with your Nike team, and that Nike team will try and funnel you to a Nike school. Same thing with Adidas. You play on the Adidas circuit for an Adidas team, and they try and funnel you to an Adidas school. Now, there are players that switch, and this is really only mostly for the highest profile players, but this is the way business has been done. And this FBI probe is essentially shining a light on that dark underbelly. The NCAA has had their suspicions about this and has known about it for somewhat, but didn't have necessarily the resources or the motivation to go after this because it's such a widespread thing and would really harm their sport, as we're seeing with the FBI now. So the only thing this is going to do is clean some of this up. Will there probably be some lingering dealings with shoe companies in this? Yes, I think it's going to be impossible to completely cut them out of this whole recruitment process with kids the way things are set up now, but it's certainly started to clean things up.
Okay, there you have it. Brian Rauf, our basketball insider here on Chat Sports. Of course, Brian, great reporting, and you'll update as you see fit. Thanks so much for coming on.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.